Hi everyone. I am going to do just a quick little demo here of how I lay out my page. I posted a video earlier in the party of a previous demonstration from Susan Budge, who is one of the 3 founders and the current president of Kiwi. I love to watch her. I get some new ideas every single time I watch her do something, but I wanted to give you my take as well, just so you can get some different styles, and I may give some different tips. The first thing I've done is I've just set 2 background sheets. I'm using that My Guy layout pack that we showed the other night. I put out 2 background sheets. For the purpose of the video, I wanted to use one of the darker backgrounds because then as we lay the templates on them, you're really going to be able to see it. So I chose the background. It's sort of a charcoal gray or maybe a navy with like a little lighter blue. There's like a dotted pinstripe in it, but you really can't see that on the screen right now. So I just wanted to start with that. My other 2 background sheets I'm going to set aside because I'm going to save those for a different layout and want to make sure I don't accidentally use those here. So then we have all these other papers to choose from that came in the kit, and some of these sentiments. So on the sentiment sheet, one thing I wanted to point out is the back side. There's cream, green, blue, and gray stripe. I really like the stripe, so I want to save some of this and use it in my layouts. So I'm going to look through these cards. I don't think I'm really going to use it as a guy thing. I definitely want to use this Great Adventure. I might want to use either this date card or the Good Times card, but like father, like son, I don't have any boys, so I'm not going to use that. Nobody in our family has a beard, so I won't use that one. And as I look through all of these, I'm thinking I may just keep these top 3, because I'll have a journaling card, Greatest Adventure, and father is one to look up to. That would be cute for something with my husband and my girls. Maybe a Father's Day card or just a layout of him with the girls. So I think I'm going to crop the sheet here so I can use this lower part for the stripe, and then I'll have these sentiments. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So here's the one I'm saving for my sentiment cards, and then the rest of this sheet I now have for a stripe. I definitely want to use this pattern because I just think it's really cool. And the back side is kind of neat too. It's like a green with a charcoal or navy, sort of a triangle pattern. So I may use a little bit of that, but primarily I think I want to use that pattern. I like to pick out my papers first and set everything else aside so that I'm not accidentally just going crazy or overwhelmed by my selection. This one is pretty much the exact same colors that are in my background sheet, and I don't really foresee using the back of this, so I'm just going to set that one aside. I like the plaid. I kind of like that tan too, so I think we'll keep that as a choice. That one I don't think I'm going to use here. The trees, maybe. When you see some of my pictures, it might make sense how that's going to fit in. So I feel like this is kind of what I've got for this layout. So I know it's really a lot of patterns, but if you look together, I mean, really only these 2 are probably a really bold, busy pattern. The rest can be a little bit more subtle and be good for accents. So that's our paper selection. I've gotten out a couple of things ahead of time. I have laid out my mountain a la carte, which I definitely want to use here, and my lacy trims and my rings, which I may decide to do something with. I have printed a handful of different pictures from my phone from a trip we took to Snowbird, which is a mountain not far outside of Salt Lake City. So we went about 1.5 years ago in the summer and met my in-laws there because they all actually live in Utah. So it was, an hour drive for them, and for us it was a flight, and they picked us up in the airport and then we went there. I got out also this little pine tree that I thought would be cute with the mountains. Because as you can see, a lot of my pictures have pine trees and mountains, so it would be really appropriate. I got out the accents and the tiny accents because these are some of my favorite template sets that I use in all the layouts. I got out the arrows set. One thing I think I forgot to mention as well is the containers that all the template sets come with. On the back, they all tend to come with a couple ideas of different layouts that you can make with these templates. So it's kind of fun to get some extra sketches and some extra ideas there. So if you're just thinking, hey, I have no idea how I'm going to use this, you can do that. In the arrows, we have, you know, some pointy ones, some bent ones, straight arrow. So I thought, you know, it might just be fun to have some of that. I got out my a la carte heart to hearts. I don't know if I'm going to use these or not, but I use them quite often. They're one of my favorites, so I thought it would just be a fun thing to have as an option. I got out the Tiny Explorer and the Elements, because with the Tiny Explorer, I was thinking this guy might be kind of fun for a title. And also I really like this flower, and in the Elements, it could be a flower or a star. In the Elements, there's a larger one. So I just thought those would actually be kind of fun templates to have out. And there's kind of a cute little, couple cute arrows in the Tiny Explorer too. So that could be a really fun one. Next to it I have the Tiny Notations, which is one of the sets that's 15% off for this month. So those are the different shapes in there. That might also be fun. And for my border, I got out Matthew Boulevard. Matthew Boulevard is actually the newest border that we have. So again, you can see the sketch ideas. The reason I brought out Matthew Boulevard is because of the border that looks like a mountain range. I just thought that would be really fun to use, and it has lots of different flavor, or lots of different shapes in it. So with just one set of borders, we can do some fun layering. So a couple things to know about our border sets is one side always matches up. This side does not. So you see this is Matthew Boulevard 1A and 1B. So both of the ones go together. There's also 2s and 3s. So if you go like this, that side doesn't match up. So it must be the other way. So if you go like that, see how that's the same height, and it kind of one flows into the other. So if I were to put that at the bottom, I could have my border continue all the way across. However, the other thing you can do is put it up here so that you kind of sandwich your layout. You could go like that. You can go like that. Or you could have a sideways here and up and down. So there's lots of different options. The only thing I would recommend is that if you are having the border go all the way across the page, either this way or the other way, that then you would use the sides that are the same, that flow together, because it just is going to give you a more consistent look. So what I'm going to do for my page is I'm thinking I'm going to do a bottom border and a top border. So I have this little magnet display board, so I can hold this on here with a magnet and it's not going to fall down. That just helps me do my layouts. If you do your layout laying flat on the desk or table surface, then you wouldn't need magnets to hold it still. You could just place stuff. But I really like this because it's easier to show and it's a little bit more ergonomic, so I'm not like sitting with my neck down and getting a stiff neck. So if I flip this one upside down, I feel like I get the shapes of the mountains on both of the layouts. So that's why I'm going to do it that way. Then I'm going to look at sets 2 and 3 and see what goes behind it best. So I can either pair this behind it and have that going on. I could slide this up and put a wavy one underneath. Or the other fun thing you can do is you can go back to back, and if you overlap a little, you get the idea of a strip. So if you cut a solid line in between as well to just give it a nice defined border. So the question is, do I want to do it like this? Or do I want to put it at the bottom of my page? I think for this one, I'm going to put it at the bottom of my page, because then I've got some mountains at the bottom and some mountains at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and use these borders and use another one behind it. Excuse me a second. I have a little pocket here that tucks right in to hold my bottom border. And then I'm going to go ahead and tuck the coordinating border up here. So those are going to be the border edges. So I think it's fun because that's kind of a hill, and then it's got some higher mountains above it. So that's what we're going to do. The next thing I kind of want to do is decide where my title is going to go, because the rest of the shapes I think will kind of fall into place. So we're going to use Greatest Adventure. So I pulled a couple guys out of Tiny Explorer. I pulled this little gear guy. So you could put that over the title and make it that shape. Or if you shift it a little, you'd get a little bigger of a border. And if you put a little embellishment here, it wouldn't look so off-center. I thought that shape would be kind of fun for a title. That would just fit. Or the one I really had in mind is what I showed in my live the other night of the mountains. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to do the mountains and either pair that next to my mountains or maybe put it up here somewhere. I don't know for sure where that's going to go yet, but we're going to keep these mountains aside because that's going to be my title. So right now, somewhere the mountains are going. The other thing I wanted to do is probably fit in one or two of these little pine trees. So maybe we do something like that. Thinking if I put my mountain on here, Greatest Adventure, and my pine trees. Or you could even tuck that in kind of over here, or put that one up here. There's so many choices, and that's where, you know, I think it's fun to play. Sometimes I lay out my whole layout. Sometimes I just worry about my borders and then fill in the rest of the stuff. Since Susan's demo shows doing the whole layout at once, I think I'm going to go ahead and just cut out a couple pieces to show you kind of the alternative way I sometimes do things. So the first thing I'm going to mention is for these cool mountains. I'm thinking that is where I want to use this really fun pattern. And since I'm doing a top and a bottom with the words, it's going to keep facing the right way because I'm using this one this direction. And I'm using the next border the next direction. So what you'll see Susan do in her videos, if you watch her live crops, is she will trace out the first border on her page. Then she'll hold the next border next to it and make a little tick mark, and that's where she cuts her paper. I like to do it a little bit differently. I like to use a ruler. We're going to use the ruler on here and hold them together. So I can see that this goes from 7 inches to about 11 1/8. So that's 4 1/8 inches. So I actually just put it in my paper trimmer, and I'm going to measure to probably about 4 1/4, just because when I trace, you know, you're not tracing right at the edge, but it's coming a little bit this way. So we'll just give a little extra border on each side. And then make sure I've got the mountains facing up the right way, since this one has text and it will matter which direction I go. And then I'm just going to go ahead and grab my pencil. I like to use mechanical pencils so that if I break it, it's easy to sharpen and I don't need to mess with that. So I just line my border up with the corners now that I have the right size sheet. And I trace my edge. If you make a big mistake, you can erase. If you make a slight mistake, it's not a big deal. Your cutting probably isn't going to be perfect either, and that's part of why we ink the edges, to both cover any flaws in the cutting and to just give it a little extra pop. So this scissors, this is the Tim Holtz Tonic scissors. I love it because it has a really nice big place to put your fingers, and it's really kind of soft and cushy, but it has a small blade, so it's really fine. And the blade, I don't know if you really can't see this very well, but there's just a tiny bit of jaggedness to the blade, which also helps cut the thick cardstock really well. So now I'm going to cut along my trace line. And again, if I make a mistake, it's not a big deal. If, as you turn, you want to turn your paper rather than turn your scissors, because you're going to get less of a rip that way. And again, if your hair off that pencil line, it's not a big deal, because when you ink the edges, it's going to completely cover that up. If your scissors is a little jagged and not perfectly smooth, again, distressing that edge a little bit with Distress ink or chalk ink is going to make a big difference. So now that I've cut my border, I'm going to go ahead and put that back on my page where it goes, where it's going to go. So there's a really fun way to kind of see it coming together right away. So now I have to decide what to put behind that for my other border. So we could do this green. I think that's a little bit dark and I maybe want something lighter. So the sage might be kind of nice. The herringbone I think is a little bit too much next to that busy pattern. The cream with the trees could be kind of fun because trees grow on mountains, right? That dark one would just get lost. Our stripe, I think, is also just a hair too busy for that location. Plaid might be kind of fun too. I'm thinking the cream or the plaid. I think we're going to go with the cream with the trees because, again, the way we're going to cut both of those, these trees are going to fit close together. Now the other thing I'm going to do to sort of conserve my paper to make sure I have plenty left, because this is a really thick border. I mean, look at it, goes up to 5 inches just on one side. And I don't want to use more than half that sheet of paper just for 2 borders. So I'm going to look kind of at the lowest point here. It's about 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/8. And on this side, the lowest point is probably about right here, which is almost 2 inches. So I'm going to conserve probably 1 inch each way and not trace all the way to the edge of the paper, because that's just going to be buried behind this other border anyway, so you're not going to see that. So when I put this together, I'm going right from the 12-inch line over to about 6.5. So I'm going to lose 1 inch each way. So I'm actually going to cut it down to 4.5 inches. And since we had a little more leeway on this side, we're just going to cut it off about 1 inch. So here, we want to maybe start at not quite 1 inch, since I can't draw a line under that. Maybe 3/4 inch. I'm just making a little mark on my template to show it where I want to line up the bottom of the paper when I make my line. That'll come right off with probably even just a slightly damp rag, or worst case, like in a magic eraser would work great. So I'm going to line that up in that spot, and then just make sure both of my edges line up across my paper, because then I know it's straight and it's not crooked, and I'm going to get a nice cut. So then I'm going to draw my pencil line again. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that border. I apologize in advance if you're hearing a bunch of background noise. My husband is outside banging around, hanging Christmas lights, and my kids are playing down the hall, and they've already had one fight today, so you just never know what you're going to hear. I know this video isn't live, but I still can't re-record it from the beginning since I've already cut some things. So as you can see, my cut is not perfect in that pencil line. Maybe you can't see that because it's not focusing well. But, you know, I'm probably off in some spots by a good millimeter, maybe even up to 1/8 of an inch. But it's not a big deal because when I distress ink that, it's going to hide all the little imperfections. So I'm just going to not push this down to the bottom of the page. You can kind of see, oops, sorry. You can see on the edge a little bit that it's only coming down to about here in the back. But the rest of that is going to be hidden, so it doesn't matter. So this is going to give me some good shape behind my border. Just going to stick a couple magnets on there and maybe one over here to hold it in place. So the other thing I'm going to go ahead and do is trace my mountain sentiment. So let me get this centered. I'm just kind of eyeballing it and make sure it looks straight and kind of centered. And that the whole design is behind the template and I'm not accidentally going to be cutting off part of the design on the card. Yep. See, I made a funny line there, but we're not really using that part of it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and cut across the bottom. I'm going to cut up the side. I'm going to cut this tip, and I'm going to come down. The reason I want to do that a little bit is because these small parts I may still use for something. If I want a really small accent somewhere, a center to the flower, or maybe a really small banner. I may end up throwing that away, but just want to leave that option open in case there's something I'm going to want to use it for. And then we'll cut out this hill. I'm going to pause you just a second. Sorry about that. I had to pause the video for a moment because my kids were screaming at each other down the hall and screaming for me. So, you know, that's the fun part of mom life, right? Some days. All right, so we're going to go ahead and use this title. I'm thinking I may just throw this mountain guy like up here, because then it would kind of continue that mountain range. Or would you maybe put it down here? Because I don't think I want it up at the top, because it doesn't really go with anything there. So I'm kind of thinking continue the mountain range maybe over here. And then I'm thinking that the little pine tree would probably go really well as well. And if I maybe cut that guy out of the sage green. Sorry, my little magnets are sticking. If I cut that out of the sage green, that might really pop against those other colors. Or the other thing I could do is move him up here somewhere. And if I pulled out that arrow set, there's a fun little round one that could kind of come out of there. And point at the mountains maybe. So something like that could be kind of fun. You could put it around your mountains. Kind of liking the around the mountain thing. I don't know, what do you think? Or would you point at my greatest adventure to kind of help highlight that? I'm thinking I'm kind of liking that. And then it sort of points at the other page as well. I'm realizing this was kind of a tricky choice with the mountains because I usually put a lot of flowers in my pages because I have girls. But I'm not sure what I want to do with flowers with this. So let's look at that next. In the accents and the mini accents, there is a 5-leafed flower. There are 6-leaf flowers. Sorry about that, I bumped my phone. So you could do that. There's kind of a little starburst guy. Could be kind of fun for some accents. What if you put him and the tree? You put him there and you put the tree there. Then you have the little one kind of popping out, maybe. Anybody like that? Or there's kind of a gear shaped one. Might also be kind of fun, like a little sun. I kind of actually liked that starburst. Or that one's kind of fun too. Where there's a star. I think we're gonna go with this. Oh, but I don't really want to put it there because I don't want to lose my shape of the mountains. So I'm going to put it over on this side. So then I can kind of keep that mountain range going strong. So maybe we'll put that on the outside, put the pine tree on the inside. And then I can decide what else I want to do. Maybe I want to layer this little one over here, or instead of that, maybe I would even do a different shape. We could do that guy. That would be kind of fun. Another set I really love is the Tiny Charmed, because there's, you know, little arrow tag. I really love this little guy. He would fit really fun, potentially, right there. So, I don't know. What do you think? Would you put the matching starburst? Or would you put that guy? Or him? I really kind of am thinking I like that. So we're going to layer our shapes. And then we're going to find room for our photos, and then we may add a few accents around those too. So these are the photos, the photo mats, and the mini photos. Again, you still get some page ideas here, even on the back of these. No, I'm not going to draw pencil lines and cut with my scissors on my photos. I know sometimes Susan makes little marks on her photos. I usually just kind of pay attention to the measurements. But it is fun to be able to lay these out. So the photos I had printed out to use for this layout, a lot of them were wallet size. Most of them went portrait, but a couple went landscape. So that's kind of a wallet photo size. even the 3x4, they're a little bit smaller than that. So we probably want, if I go to the mini photos, I thought there was like a 2.5 by 3.5, but either I was wrong or I did not put that away properly. I don't think we have the smaller size I was thinking of. So what I'm probably going to do is just use the 3x4, but I will just make them a little bit smaller than that, so I have a little bit of extra room. Or maybe I'll use the 3x4 to cut a photo mat and then put the photo kind of inside that mat, because as you can see, that's going to give me just probably a nice little 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch margin for my mat. So I did have 1 or 2 photos that were full size, so I'd kind of like to get that panoramic view. So I don't know if I want to stripe those across the top. Sorry, I think I bumped my phone down again. So potentially those could go up here, or maybe across the bottom. I have some of these with my girls playing on this equipment. I think I'm going to save those for a different layout, because for this one I really want the view. So here we had ridden a gondola up to the top of Hidden Peak, which was at 11,000 feet. So I kind of want to keep that sign and use our family at the top of that. And then this was right at the top of the gondola, so I'm thinking those would be fun ones. This was kind of my girls running ahead just because they were excited. So I just thought using Greatest Adventure, you know, it's kind of fun that they were running off to have fun that day, but I'm not sure if I will use that for this layout or for something else. And then I have these other photos. So I've got 3 portrait and a landscape and maybe another portrait. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay these out. So I'm thinking if I stripe that across the top, these pictures were taken at the top of the gondola. So maybe I put a couple, I'm just going to go ahead and grab a photo mat. Here's my 4x5. Or here's my 4x6. So it looks like if I cut probably about a 4x5.5 or 5 3/4 to use as a mat, that might be fun. So I'm going to go ahead and use for now the 4x5s. So let's just say I put the 2 of those here, just to give you an idea of how I'm going to lay this out.